My name is Jamie Murray, and I am the mom and the Nona to our son Kevin Linke and his daughter Oakley Grace Linke. We are the family that started Justice for Oakley. My son and his daughter were forced into the family court system. We were in it for about a year, I suppose, and things seemed to be getting on track. My granddaughter started talking about Larry. And we didn't really know who Larry was, but we were having to pick Oakley up at Oakley's great-grandparents. And that's where we would pick her up and drop her off. So Kevin and I would go to pick her up, and there was a gentleman, and she would say, "Hey, there's Larry." Well, Kevin had been told a story about a guy that lives in the woods over the course of the years of the relationship. And so he was just some guy that lived in the woods. A drunk that lived in the woods is how it was talked about. So you never really gave it any thought until your 3-year-old daughter says there's Larry. And then you're like, "Oakley, you know Larry?" And she says, "Yeah, Daddy, he works with Grandpa and on the farm and takes care of the animals." And so that's how this all started. So Kevin and I were like, "Well, who is Larry? And why is he here? And why does Oakley know him?" So Kevin reached out to Oakley's mom, and I reached out to some of the other family members trying to find out the story on Larry. Larry in the woods, they refer to him as. So Kevin actually got no response. I did have conversation with a family member that said he's just a drunk that lives in the woods, and that they say he's just going to die out there from drinking himself to death. And no one wanted to share his last name or his history. Okay, so let's fast forward to this is concerning. And Kevin ends up back in jail again due to what's going on in the courtroom. And there's a conversation going on between some of the other guys that are in this cell. And they start talking about the things happening, out at Larry in the woods. And Kevin's like, "Are you talking about Larry that lives in the woods on McLean Road?" And they're like, "Yeah." So they start talking. And then in the conversation comes up that he has been in prison. And so Kevin said, "For what?" And they're like, it doesn't matter. It's no big deal. Then he asked for his last name, and it's like, no, it's no big deal. Well, no one wanted to tell the story at this point, right? Okay, so Kevin calls me and says, "Mom, there's something really wrong here. You need to find out Larry in the woods history because he's been in prison." Okay, so I made a phone call to the detective that at the time was working on an investigation that he had opened up in regards to some bruising and some other issues. So that was a whole nother issue in investigation. And I told him, I said, "Hey, listen, there's this guy, and Oakley knows him, and we don't know his story." So he said, "I will find out who this is." So he called me back, and he informed me that I needed to take a look at the Michigan Sex Offender Registry. So I did. I was horrified. And in the interim, you have to understand why this is all going on. Oakley is talking about Larry. He's talking about his shack in the woods and about his kittens. She is making statements to all of us that Larry's her best friend. She wants to bring him cookies, and Grandpa takes us out, her and her cousins, out to Larry's shack in the woods. But a lot of times it's just Oakley.
Hey, so who has kittens?
Larry's.
Oh, where are the kittens at?
At his house.
And you see the kittens?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
How many are there?
One.
There's only one kitten?
Yeah.
What color is it?
Black.
And what's its name?
Rosie.
Oh, and Larry lets you play with the kitties? Huh?
No.
No, who does?
Anybody does it.
Oh, anybody gets to play with them? That's cool. You like kittens?
I was at Grandma Papa's last week, and one of the kittens bit Larry.
Oh, one of the kittens bit Larry?
And then he got a boo-boo.
You know,
He
and
did.
so we are trying to protect this little girl. So anyway, so this isn't something, you know, they keep trying to spin the narrative and say that she has zero contact. But what nobody is saying is that what we're saying isn't true, because it is true and they all know it. Okay, so why they're fighting to allow this contact, I don't know, because I will never understand really why. We have a great-grandparent, which is an old man, taking a little girl out into the woods to visit an old man that lives in a shack in the woods. In this whole time frame, Kevin reached out to every entity. He went to CPS, the judge, the friend of the court, the entities that were doing the counseling, the supervised parenting, therapist, everybody. He reached out to every entity and the judge. So let's understand, and the judge. And this has been shut down from the minute he has had to fight to protect his daughter. They cut him off at the knees and make it impossible for him to go to these entities that are put in place to help. But do understand that there was an investigation by CPS. CPS issued a duty to warn and said there is to be zero contact between Oakley and Larry Whitcomb. Okay? Renewal Christian Counseling said Oakley should, any days that she is being left at this house, should immediately be turned over. Those days go, she goes with her dad, even because of just the potential risk of contact between this man and Oakley. Okay, so with all that being said, the judge has continued to not allow this issue to be talked about and put on record. These reports are not allowed to be put on record. The judge is actually stating that CPS did an investigation and saw no issue with the situation. So Kevin, after every resource and every entity and every means possible to protect his daughter were cut off, and he had no other choice but to we all sat down and he said we have to go public, and we all agreed. We were left absolutely no other option but to do this. And that's how Justice for Oakley came to be. They are trying to shut us up, shut us down, and still allowing this little girl to be left at this home where this man lives. This man has a history that shouldn't allow him to be living along a public bike trail that butts up to a family campground. And I believe nobody in the situation really thinks this is okay. They're just allowing it. And unless and until this little girl is out of harm's way, this fight will continue.